So then, in light of the fact that I've just covered the finale for the GT World Challenge Europe Sprint Cup, let's talk about the finale of the Endurance Cup as well around Barcelona, Circuit Barcelona, Catalunya. I know that I'm talking about this around the time that there's the 24-hour race happening, the Creventic 24-hour series finale, but let's have a bit of a chat about what came up in that final round because, well, it had implications in regards to both the Endurance Championship and also GT World Challenge Europe 2025 overall. I'm going to try and do this in one take, a bit like I've done with some other content. As you can hear, I'm just not entirely 100% at the moment. But either way, Rutronic managed to hold on and take the win in the championship for the Endurance Cup. That's despite not winning a single event. They got a second place at Spa, a second place at Paul Rick, and a third place at the Nürburgring. But aside from that, it was a 4th, a 6th, a 7th here in Barcelona, and 21st at Monza. They just had to hold on, the likes of Muller, Niederhauser, and Picciarello. And when you look at who was their main competition, they ended up getting a little bit lucky in the end, in that their main competition didn't score any points. The Manfilter AMG of Auer, Carioli, and Engel, didn't they pick up a penalty as well? So it was quite tricky for them in the end because, well, they were the ones who won in Monza. They got a second place in Nürburgring, and they also scored some points at the 6-hour point in the Spa 24. Meanwhile, whilst they took the overall driver standings for Kelvin van der Linde and Charles Weerts, the WRT with Ugo de Wilde ended up third in the championship despite getting 6th here. I mean, it was the best that they could really do in the situation, especially given that their BMW stablemate / rivals of Rover Racing were only 3 points behind at the end of it, despite the fact that they got onto the overall podium of Farfus, Krohn and Marciello. And it meant that for Marciello, for instance, he ended up finishing 6th, all by himself, in the driver's standings, just ahead of Picciarello, who only did the Endurance Cup. The difference was that Marciello did the Misano sprint weekend and got a win in the first one alongside Valentino Rossi. But it generated a lot of headlines, this event. Garage 59 picking up the win. I mean, they'd been great early in the season. Dean McDonald, I think, is one of my most impressive drivers for GT World Challenge Europe this year, because despite being a gold, he was fighting up at the front in the first couple of races, a bit like when you have a look at what happened for the Verstappen.com Racing one, the one that was the Aston Martin here, rather than the M3 Ferrari that's in the Sprint Cup. Because Chris Lullum has been incredibly impressive despite being a gold, the same for the likes of Vermeulen and Harry King. They've all been incredibly impressive despite the fact that their ratings aren't high up because, well, they haven't competed at the top level before. But well done for the likes of Pret and Smalley as well, because Louis Pret had been competing in different championships and different championship standings over the course of the year. So for them to be able to get a good finish to the season, it's deserved. Second place in the race was the Almanar WRT, who also have had some bad luck this year. Their best result before this was a 4th in Monza and then a 10th in Paul Ricard. Those are the only other times they scored points. And then like I said, the podium for this one was rounded out by Rover Racing. If you have a look at what happened for the Gold Cup, well, it was a Verstappen.com win in the end. And again, like I said, perhaps somewhat unsurprising. They competed in all the events, and as a result, they end up getting a slam dunk win in the gold just outright. I know that they were competing and seeing how well they could do in the overall standings, but they won gold at Spa, they won gold Brands Hatch and Zandvoort. I mean, all the way up until that retirement in the first Misano race, which was just lap 1 at Misano things. They finished 1st or 2nd all the way up to that point across the endurances in the Aston Martin and the sprints in the Ferrari. And even then they won race 2 in Misano. Didn't get particularly good finishes in Manicura, 5th and 6th, but then they got the podium again in class, the Nürburgring, at Valencia, which included a 2nd place and a win in the sprint finale, and then 3rd place in Barcelona. Meant they were comfortably clear of Alzabert and Klingman, despite the fact that Louis Pret ends up high up in the gold driver standings overall at the end of all of this. Because again, like I said, Garage 59 won. It was a gold. It was 2 golds on the podium, let alone for good finishes within their own class. They got on the overall podium, which does feel a bit harsh that they don't get bonus points because they're the gold team that ends up winning. But then gold cars can have plat drivers. They just need to have a gold. For the Silver Cup in Endurance Cup, it was Tracer Attempto that ends up taking it, and second place ended up being the Get Speed car, whilst third place went the way of Boots and VDS. Again, a team that have been up and down their luck throughout this season. So when you have a look at that in terms of the standings overall, it's hardly surprising that Boots and VDS managed to take it, because Mex Jensen had some bad luck with some of the bits for Paradigm over the course of the season, but was generally there or thereabouts, whilst Boost and VDS ended up picking up some wins in both standings, so they can carry more points as a result. Tracer Attempto, their best one was Alex Aker, who was in third place, ahead of the Santaloc of Klemenko and Nesatua. And then let's talk quickly bronze, because I don't want to go on for too long talking about this stuff. Bronze, in the end, the winners were the Rutronic Racing car, and they won at Monza as well, so well done to them with that one. Second place went the way of Tracer Attempto, and then third place went the way of Kessel Racing. And it's possibly unsurprising that Blattner and Marshall ended up taking the championship. They were 65 points clear of Winwood Racing at the end of the season. Granted, it's because Winwood retired in Barcelona, but they managed to still end up holding on anyways, and it's a similar story in the Endurance Cup. In fact, the retirement hurts Winwood even more here, because Santaloc also retired of Everard, Magnus and Ritchie. So they end up in fourth in the Endurance Cup standings, 1 point behind Lion Speed and 5 points behind Rutronic. So, poor Porsche. They don't end up with many of the honours, but hey, it could be worse. It could be a poor Mercedes driver, because they're like Mercedes. I know. If I'm talking about Mercedes, that car is out of date. It is still very much the Evo 2020 that you see in the likes of ACC or iRacing. But you still have to feel for them, because you can see Ferraris, you can see Aston Martins, you can see Lamborghinis, you can see BMWs taking the spoils. But not Mercedes. I mean, Porsche were there or thereabouts, and Porsche are picking up championships elsewhere. Anyways, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching and joining. If you had any thoughts, let me know in the comment section down below. But until next time, it's bye for now.